Whoa! Hey, did you hear that? Yeah. My screen just said recording in progress.
Thanks, not Siri.
Yeah, thanks, Alexa. What up?
Right. I'm just my voice is cracking. I'm coming down off of a caffeinated anxiety attack, so let's do this.
Oh man, much respect. I thought that you were just going through puberty.
Oh man, kind of.
You're
what are we talking about today?
Well, so we're here. We're episode 8. If we did all the first 7 episodes, day after day after day, for a total of, if we did an episode every day, starting out the gate, then we would be officially on the 2nd week right now. So there we go. I like the setting in the background there. You elevated it up a little bit. I feel like something gets added in the background every week.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that. I was gonna throw another painting in there, but I just threw my plant back there. What's coming up?
Well, your plant is kind of like a painting. You know, it's a piece of art.
It is an art. I'm actually growing 2 like that, but I'm growing them 2 different ways, and it's interesting to like watch how it shapes itself based on the technique that you go about pruning it and topping it and whatnot. But that's just technical weed growing shit. But this I thought was my prettiest plant. This thing is going to be like 6 feet tall at the end of the summer.
Man, I'm looking forward to seeing that baby grow. I mean, you got real children and you have plant children. So you're just a dad in various different ways.
And but when I opened your email before, when with the topics in it, and I was reading like your my favorite tracks list, and I just like was skimming down it, and I thought punching the clock said punching my cock, and I was like, damn. I was like, why is that in this email?
Man, that would be crazy if J. Cole did drop a song called "Punching My Cock." I wonder how that would be received. Like, you know, like if it was the exact same song and lyrics were all the same, nothing was changed, but it was just called "Punching My Cock." Well, it's like he does say that in one of the lines. He's like punching the clock, da da. But you know, if it just said "Punching My Cock," I mean, I feel like more rappers need to talk about punching themselves in the penis, because it happens. It's accidentally sometimes.
I actually do that kind of often. Pretty much anytime I drop anything around that area, I end up sacking myself in the catch. But
well, you're just disciplining yourself for dropping something. You're trying to keep yourself on your toes.
Yeah, I can't be fucking up like that. Yeah, so J. Cole.
Well, yes. Well, we can get into the J. Cole here, of course, but I just want to address the fact that my background has also changed as well here. I'm currently in my mom's garage, so that might be. I'm just trying out something different here. Let us know if you like the background of the wood and all the garage vibes. I mean, you know.
I feel like this is very Nova Scotian for you to be doing this.
I'm in the garage. I mean, it's an authentic feel for a lot of Nova Scotia.
You should set up with the stove behind you, the fire going.
That would be pretty romantic.
Yeah, get the wine out. We'll switch it up.
Yeah, you can give me your weed plant. I'll give you my pellet stove.
No, I just meant switch up the vibe. Get it. We'll romanticize the podcast. Sip wine in front of fire.
And I just want to shout out everybody that watches. You know, obviously we're still in the earlier phases right now. I said that to you yesterday or the day before. I think that I feel like guests will definitely be like an important component of this podcast as we're moving forward and stuff. Now, it wouldn't be something that like where the podcast every single week will be orchestrated around making sure that we have a guest, but definitely we'll be tapping into getting guests and stuff. So let us know who you would like to see on the podcast as a guest, whether it's an artist, it's a, you know, entrepreneur, is just someone who has like a really entertaining personality, it's funny, whatever, you think that they would have some good stories just to provide the best entertainment possible. That's what we want to do. So let us know in the comments who you would like to see us feature on the podcast here. I mean, I would be down to open up, like, you know, we are in a relatively small we're from a small town. We're from a small place, Cape Breton, Nova Scotia, whatever. But I mean, there's still enough people here, even if we had like local celebrities on or anything like that, where, you know, that'd be a big deal. And a lot of people from where we're from would probably tune in to see us get a, you know, I don't know who would a local celebrity be. We get Frankie.
I was just about to say that we gotta get Frankie on here, man. That'd be sick.
Yeah, and I mean, I see, but week by week, usually it's like the same people are commenting or whatnot, and I'm occasionally seeing more people every now and then tap in and drop the comments that are new faces. So I appreciate everyone who's been watching this episode 1. Maybe they jumped on episode 4. There's this guy that's always commenting, and he's like religiously making sure he watches each episode and from the start to finish, even if he's like a few behind. Like I got a comment on the YouTube channel today. He was just starting episode 6, so it's good that he's no matter what, no matter how far behind he is and how aged the topics may be, he's still tapping in and giving us those watch hours. So
yeah, man. I mean, there's a few podcasts that I not religiously watch. I don't watch every episode, but I watch most of them. Mm-hmm. I know for like, I think I've actually watched every single Philip DeFranco show that's existed.
I've never watched any of his podcast episodes. I mean, I never was like an avid follower of him like you were, but I do see that he has a podcast, which kind of makes me interested.
I don't watch all of his podcasts. I do watch it sometimes. It's okay, but it's kind of like super, like, I don't know. I don't want to get political, but like he's very kind of like lefty, like super lefty kind of guy. And like sometimes I just feel like it's corny. But like no, like I said, I watched literally every one of his shows because I used to watch him when I was younger. And I went back and I watched every video that he ever put out. Like back when his show he used to like just rant to his phone or like to a camera for like 4 minutes. And that's what it used to be. It was just like, oh, this topic is fucked up in the world. And then that would be his show. And he would just comment on stuff and make crude jokes about it. But it evolves into like a news show over time. But I watch every time that comes out, I watch it. So, I mean, every one of those people, every one person that we get that's like that is like gold, you know, that's amazing.
Definitely 100%, because it becomes a routine part of their week, you know, like I watched that podcast of Mark Norman and Joe List, the 2 comedians from New York, Tuesdays with Stories. And I know every Tuesday there's going to be a new episode that comes out no matter what. And, you know, I when I first started really watching their podcast, listening to it and everything, like they were doing it over Zoom anyway. And prior to that, they were doing it in person, everything like we were. And for the majority of the last year, they did it over Zoom, I believe. So, you know, that's what made me, you know, kind of be like, you know, regardless of us getting locked down and stuff, the show must go on. So
he's actually on Joe Rogan today, I believe, or yesterday.
Joe List was, yeah, because he's been talking about trying to get on there.
Yeah, I was just watching it before I came on here. They were talking about some crazy shit about like Michael Jackson. Joe Rogan was saying like he hadn't been canceled, like Michael Jackson wasn't canceled rather, because it was never like concluded before he died. And then he got into this whole theory about how he never could have like raped kids because he thinks that he was like chemically castrated as a child to maintain his voice. It's like this fucking, I don't know. That Joe List guy's really funny. Was that who we were listening to that podcast the other day? Weren't we?
Yeah. Joe List. I find that I watched his stand-up, which was funnier than most stand-ups that I would watch anyway. So I would definitely like recommend it to somebody to go check out. Like I would say for someone, you know, go check out Mark Norman and Joe List, both respectively very talented comedians in both of their own right. They kind of have a similar sense of humor, a little bit edgy, but still kind of like old. It has kind of like an old-fashioned feel to it as well, like just like the tones of their voices and everything. But honestly, I think Joe List is funnier just in general conversation than his stand-up is, because sometimes I find on their podcast he's funnier than Mark, just the way that his
when we were listening to that the other day, you showed me Mark Norman before, and when we were listening to that, I was like, this guy is like being Mark Norman more than Mark Norman's being Mark Norman. I was like, these guys must like reflect on each other a lot. I thought it was
That's
just
probably
some
why it
random.
works so well.
I thought
Like
it
they
was
were
some random guy that he had on that was trying to like
imitator.
reflect him. You know what I mean?
It was kind of like when Theo Vaughn interviewed Riff Raff. People were saying that Riff Raff out Theo Vaughn, Theo Vaughn. But yeah, no, their chemistry is fantastic. And they're the whole premise of their podcast is just as they're both professional comedians, they do a lot of shows and they're traveling and stuff, and every week they just get together and they just kind of talk about the wacky stories that take place during their gigs and everything. But how did we get on this topic of Joe List?
I have
don't know.
no idea.
But you know what? The thing is, what I noticed with a lot of
we
comedians is
got here from Joe Rogan. I don't even know how we got on there.
Oh, we were talking about Philip DeFranco. That's what I was going to say about Philip DeFranco. I think that a lot of like the more popular mainstream YouTubers that center their channel around doing just primarily news related topics, like his channel is interesting because it's daily videos and the way that it's set up. Obviously, he has a team that does the research and everything, and it's credited at the end too. It shows like research and who wrote the script that he reads out when he's doing his videos and everything. So he definitely has like a decent team that's getting all the news stories for him and stuff. But he covers like the most popular political stories I find, but then it's like a mixture of like YouTuber scandals and then whatever. But just based off of the way that like he has super clickbaity titles, I find, but his content is still pretty genuine and it's bipartisan. So like he never really expresses his opinion for the most part when he's doing those videos. And then I saw he had a podcast, so I was thinking like it would be interesting to listen to this and see what this guy's opinion on things are like when he is not reporting the news, because most of the time if someone's being trusted to deliver the news, obviously there's sprinkles of their opinion throughout just based off of how
he does definitely display his opinion, but he at least leaves the conversation open to both sides. Like and that's, but I find it's I don't want to say it's not genuine. Like it's just like you can tell what his opinion is. Oftentimes, just by the way he's speaking.
The way it's titled and
so you can see where he at least doesn't like disregard an opposing opinion. Totally, but like sometimes it's just like I don't know, but I like his show. His podcast is actually pretty interesting because he kind of has this whole team that's basically just consists mostly of like people that have followed him, you know what I mean, and then are in LA and they go there to work for his studio, and it's like some of they had like office vlogs and stuff, and they were pretty like it shows around the office, and it's a sick environment. Like he kind of constructed this whole like news network really out of just he used to something fucked up was going on in the United States or something, he would just make a video and comment about it and talk about whatever else, and you know what I mean, it'd be a short little video and then he turned it into this whole thing. It's pretty cool.
But, yeah, man, I think like the idea around just like covering popular topics that everyone is looking up, I mean, that's like kind of the premise with us putting out all these clips essentially every day, is like I try to make sure that we're discussing topics that I know are I want to have like a balance within this podcast of topics that are interest to us, and then also are topics that people are researching a lot and discussing every day, because obviously these are things that are being covered by a lot of other media sources. So I think it's important for us to give our take on it, but I would never want to cover stuff that I just have absolutely no interest in without just for the sake of doing it because people are looking that particular topic up. So, and I also think that it's important to showcase, like to express your opinion as well, because at the end of the day, if you're trying too hard to make sure that you don't say anything that could be backfired against you and you try to just please everybody, then you're not even necessarily being interesting at all. I think, like that is why, certain public figures are entertaining and people tune into them. Like, I don't know if you're familiar that much with like Andrew Schultz, but his podcast and the premise of his podcast, he's a comedian. He does Brilliant Idiots with Charlemagne and everything. So his popularity through doing that with someone like Charlemagne the God kind of allowed him to be able to take that platform and then, grow something of his own. But he's like definitely not PC culture, but he's not necessarily like in the right or the left direction at all. He's just kind of calling
He-
things out. He's basically almost saying what everyone else is thinking, I think. And
well,
if
I mean, I think that's
people need that.
something that you can only perceive for yourself because some people think so differently. But like, I get what you're saying. I think that there, and this is why I brought up that thing with Philip DeFranco before, is like I can't, I don't think you can be genuine and have like be on one side of the fence. You know what I mean? You can't be on one side completely and be like everything that everybody over there is saying is stupid. You can't do that.
I
Like
find it very difficult
you know
to
what
do
I
that
mean?
too.
Like I
I think life
can't.
would be a lot easier if you could do that.
Well, that's when you look at like the political system in the US, that's how it has to perform because it's really a two-party system. So it's them or us. You know what I mean? There's no in between. Where in like Canada, there's multiple political parties. And if you don't have like a 51% majority, you can't make a decision. You know what I mean? Just by yourself. So you have to cooperate with other parties and figure out a mutual situation. And it's, you know what I mean, where when it gets that complicated, it actually kind of makes it easier in a way to accomplish goals together because there's more input and you have to really weigh in with the other people. Whereas like in the US, it's just like you have a majority and you just try to up that majority and keep it up so you can force things through. But that doesn't really work because there's rules in place that kind of stop that. And then it just makes everything a mess.
Yeah, it just seems like it's a lot of sacrifice to push forward the overall agenda. You
Yeah.
know, even if it's necessarily like everything that you're vocalizing isn't something that you exactly believe in.
But it creates this fucking this thing where you need to take a side and you can't be in between. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like people in the middle are just looked at like, oh, like what, you know what I mean? Like what do you mean you're in the middle? It's like you're either this way or that way. And it causes like extreme border like psychologically between people. And that's kind of what you're seeing unfold in the United States right now. Like I feel like it's on the brink of civil war because it's only you're either one way or you're the other way. And the views are getting so opposing that like people on both ends of it are just being ridiculous in the claims they're making and the behavior that they're having. And people are following that. You know what I mean? It's not just like, you know, people that are like, okay, I'm behind the left. They're like, whatever you say goes. People on the right, it's like whatever you say goes. And on both sides, there's craziness going on.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely. I feel like um, that's why people like Joe Rogan are kind of interesting. I think because they're just for the most part objectively thinking in a sense where they don't necessarily have to abide by the policies and the psychological approach that each political party takes, and that's just how they base their beliefs. It's kind of like, okay, this I want to support this party, or I want to support this person, and I like what they're doing for the most part. Maybe I like 80% of the things that they're doing, but I still will have the transparency to call out them on their bullshit if I don't necessarily agree with them, even though I do support them. And I think that that should be the case with anything when you're supporting a public figure, an artist, or you know, a YouTuber, anything. If there's somebody that you're a fan of, and if you're a fan of somebody, you should still feel like you should feel like it's your responsibility to be able to call them out when they're doing something that you don't necessarily think is in their best interest or something you don't agree with. Like we shouldn't feel like we have to be obligated to agree with everything because that's the right thing to do. Because you know,
Yeah.
otherwise,
Well, like I don't always like. So Joe Rogan the other day had a guy on. He from the was Anthony or Opie and Anthony show. You know what that is? It's like a radio or some sort of show with they just hosted comedians and it was like crazy. It was like some sort of iconic show. I'm not really aware of it, but he had one of the two guys from that show on. And they were kind of talking about like COVID and the reactions to it and how like I kind of agree with some of the things that Joe Rogan talks about with when it comes to COVID, but like a lot of it is also like, you know, and not just COVID, like other things, other political issues where I'm not necessarily like on that side. And I'm just like, oh, I'm just not going to listen to this. or if I am, it's to kind of try to understand a different perspective on it and weigh it out in my own head and be like, okay, how do I feel about that versus what I think already? You know what I mean? And sometimes my opinion changes. Like, I feel like you have to be able to at least tolerate like other ideas to really come to a true conclusion for yourself. And I feel like that's what he does. Like, there's a lot of things that he says that are like seem like super far right, and there's a lot of things that he says, like, he votes Democrat and openly admits that, you know what I mean? But at the same time, he like holds a lot of views that are like, screamed on the right that people on the left are like, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But when you're somebody that is, if you anyone of a,
if you form your own opinion, that shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that it's admirable for someone who is in a position where they have millions of followers and subscribers to still be able to speak their own mind. I mean, it's a strange comparison, but Kanye West, just everything that he has done and vocalized over the last 10 years, whether or not you think that it was, smart for him to say, or you agree or disagree with it, I think that it's kind of, you can still respect when somebody can get that level of fame and still feel like they can, and still speak their mind, regardless of if it's not the popular opinion of the people that, pay your bills essentially and buy your stuff and support you. But I guess we'll tap into the first topic here. So J. Cole released his 6th studio album, The Off Season. For the most part, it is very limited when it comes to features. That is his shtick. But it does feature Lil Baby, 21 Savage, Boss, 6LACK Black, however you pronounce it, Maury, who is someone I've seen his name pop up a lot, but I've never really had the chance to check him out yet. But 95% of it is still just straight up J. Cole. People are calling it one of his best projects already. I'm sure there's also people that are not saying that about it, but from me listening to it, I think I probably listened to it from start to finish about 6 times now. And I've always been a fan of J. Cole. I listened to a lot of like his earlier mixtapes, like the Warm Up and Friday Night Lights, years after it came out. But I think that's probably the J. Cole projects I listened to the most. I remember when Born Sinner came out, we listened to that for most of the summer and everything. And every project he's put out, I've listened to like extensively, but I can't necessarily say that I listened to a lot of J. Cole in the last 1 or 2 years. And I didn't really listen to that KOD album much when it came out. I just
listened to that a bit. I didn't go through that a whole lot. Do you say that? What did you say? Something about Friday Night Lights? I think that's when I started listening to him.
Well, that came out, I think, in like 2009 or 10. Because his debut album came out in 2011, the Sideline Story album. I believe it came out in 2011. And so I know those mixtapes are what actually like broke him through. So I would imagine they would have been a year or two before his debut album came out. But this project, man, from start to finish, I love to see the fact that he has like tapped back in and decided to make an effort to make like one of his better technical rapping albums in a while. I mean, J. Cole always
I'm
delivers.
very glad that happened, because I found with KOD that and not just J. Cole was doing this, but I find if you look at like the top 10 to 5 real top 10 to 5 rappers that were putting out music, in terms of like the Drakes, Kendricks, Coles, like everybody was trying to fit into the trap era. And I feel like KOD did that a lot more, where I felt like he really went back to some classic shit on this and just hit with bars. And I think that happening right now is going to set a precedent for what's to come in terms of like the general trend. Like, I feel like that's going to kind of set a wave in motion of just less, rap pop tracks.
Well, it's going to sell a lot more copies and have a lot more mainstream success than the majority of rappers that make, music that you would be considered to be like pop rap or like more of like the melodic stuff, which I, for the most part, listen to. I listen to everything that's new that comes out, and I enjoy most of it.
Yeah, but I feel like it's going to take back like original hip hop elements to kind of the forefront again. Like, I feel like you're going to have an actual diverse
Yeah,
like the
you're
diverse
saying that like
releases where it's not going to be all trappy poppy stuff. You're going to see more
yeah.
bars come out that are going to be more mainstream, because typically I don't think that was really ever a thing. But I feel like if J. Cole, like I feel like Drake actually is going to listen to this album and have to assess what he's doing.
Yeah.
You know
Well,
what
you
I
know
mean?
what, man? Like when you think about it, like the sound on this project is timeless. Like this album could have came out, like some songs on this album could have came out in 2010, and it would have made. Not saying like some of the sounds that he's using on this project are like dated by any means, or any kind of style that he's delivering on this project is dated or
No, I
sounds
think it's
old.
more
But
of a
it's like,
timeless sound.
yeah, exactly. Because
It's
like,
more focused on him. It's not the instrumental. Like
well,
a lot of
exactly.
the
There is
pop trap type music that's coming out today, like if you took the super producer that's behind it away, it's not going to hit the same. Like I think we talked about that with King Von, whereas like if he didn't have the kind of production that he had, like his tracks wouldn't hit so hard. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like it's some of these artists like don't exist without the production behind them. But J. Cole removed that element from this album because the beats were good on this album, and I listened to it for that today because me and Mackie were talking about that. And there's not a single song on that album where the beat overpowers him at all.
No,
Not even
and that
slightly. It's really him focused on his technical capabilities. You know what I mean? Actually rapping some real shit. You know what I mean? With content. So I think that's going to really set a precedent in the coming, like through the summer. It's going to be interesting. I think this is going to be a good year for like serious rap. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that we've gotten a lot of that. Not like a lot of it, but like we always need the forefront artists to deliver and provide us with a timeless project that we can be listening to for years to come. And truthfully, like I don't really feel like there's been that many albums in the past year that have had that kind of effect on me. Really, like as far as like stuff that's dropped this year, I did really like the Young Stoner Life album, but that's a totally different sound. I can appreciate the melodies and stylistically like the switch ups of flows and everything. I feel like that was a strong record from the artists and what you would expect from the artists that were contributing to that record. But this right here, like the expectations around a J. Cole album at this point in the game, when he's had so much great projects that have been released, it's quite high, and for him to over exceed expectations is pretty impressive. Because we can't lie, like when Drake has dropped some albums in the past, they've been disappointing because Drake has made enough great music for people to hold them at a high standard. But this Drake, J. Cole album outperforms at least his last two. Like Forest Hills Drive was probably what people would consider his best project. Maybe I like this
think so.
Forest Hills Drive. I like this better.
Forest Hills Drive was good because it was very descriptive. It was kind of, there was some storytelling on there. It was personal, you know what I mean? And I found this project was a different kind of personal, like where it was more kind of aggressively expressing himself, which was good to see because you didn't really ever get that out of him. You got it out of a few verses that he did on that Dreamville album.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
But I found the KOD stuff, it felt like he was trying to fit in to what was going on a little bit. Still addressed it. He still addressed it.
I remember KOD that record that aged very well, where he addressed that, you know, rappers that were popular at that time were gonna end up being on like Love and Hip Hop, you know, or you know, like, not like Lil Pump
and that's what I meant by like the thing is he was meeting the sound a little bit, like he was meeting the current sound with his touch. But I feel like this album is like kind of non-conformist, like he's really and kind of, because he's doing old school stuff almost, but like it's just not what's going on. But I feel like he's setting the tone.
Well, he's somebody that is just known to have such an impact when he puts something out now that he can essentially set the tone. But I don't necessarily expect like Trippie Redd and you know, Playboy Cardi to go do a boom bap project now.
No, I think it's going to come from a lower level. I feel like you're going to see up and coming talent want to do that instead of doing, you know, talking about guns and lean
Oh, you
shit.
were
You know what I
referring
mean?
to like the 14-year-old kid that's listening to hip hop right
I'm
now,
talking about the impact. I'm talking about the
and what's
impact of the upcoming generation is going to feel what's going on this year. And I feel like I just have a feeling like Drake did that whole like dance shit. Like I can't remember the exact name of the genre.
dance
But
hall?
dance hall, yeah. Kind of vibe. And like you were saying earlier, he has projects that miss, but I don't think it's because it's bad. I think it's because he's trying to switch direction and catch a trend, but also expose that trend to the huge audience that he already has.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like if you noticed on like Nothing Was the Same, like that was a bar heavy kind of, but also really varied album. And then when shit, what was that project he did?
If you read this,
If you're reading this, it's too late. All of a sudden the tone changed. He was using like the Jamaican slang at that point and like just doing a different kind of energy. You know what I mean? Like he always kind of tries to switch it, which is a good thing. Like Mac Miller did that too. Like he was always trying to bring something different. But I feel like this J. Cole having this impact with what he just did with a real actual bar heavy album that's probably going to sell really well and do really well. I feel like Drake's going to have to come with that, but harder. So I feel like this is going to be a really not harder necessarily, but like he's going to try and combat that, you know what I mean, with, you know, flexing his actual skill rather than making some dancey pop track. I feel like this is going to be like a real rap year.
well,
You know?
recently Drake did flex his skill per se on that
Well,
lemon
on that,
freestyle, I think. Like
what
this
is
is the
it?
thing with Drake.
On the
He's
what?
never like that lemon pepper freestyle that he did with Rick Ross.
Oh
On
yeah, yeah.
Scary Hours.
And if you listen
Like
to his
that
verse
is
on,
fucking bro. That lemon pepper, like that track that like he raps for like, I swear to God, his verse is like 3.5 minutes at least. That song itself is like 6 minutes. Like that's like a fucking 100 bar verse. That Drake verse on that track is incredible. Every time that Drake steps up to the plate and wants to rap, he is rapping at the same level as J. Cole is. But the thing is, Drake doesn't necessarily switch up the flow like that as much as J. Cole did, which was really impressive to me on this project. J. Cole, like, there's songs like, what was that song? I believe it is The Climb Back, bro. The Climb Back. I think it's the second last song on the album. Oh no, it's third last. I believe is the song Close, and then the Hunger on Hillsides, the last track. But the song The Climb Back, like every line, bar for bar, on that first verse is incredible. There's like the flawless rhyme scheme. I found like the flow was just constantly switching up, and he was like, sometimes an artist will have like an incredible, like think about Logic for an example. For someone who is not necessarily a experienced rap listener, yes, Logic is very talented in his own respect, but he's not necessarily hitting you with quotable lines bar for bar. When he's doing like a really rapid fire flow, J. Cole is capable of doing that, rapping with a delivery that is very easy for you to consume and understand everything he's saying, and then he'll switch it up. He'll do a triple flow, and then he'll do a little bit more of a trendier 2021 sound of flow. But every single thing that he's saying is on topic. There's punchlines, there's fucking all that shit, man. And on that track, The Climb Back, it's incredible. And then the hook is even good. He's like, we gonna tear it up we gonna tear up the night like the sun had a night shift, something crazy like that. And there's just like, and even the hook is dope. And it's like it's just a classic sing along, just rappy hook. And then the second verse, he has this whole concept about he's talking to this guy and he feels like this guy's jealous, and he wishes that he feels like he should have been in his shoes and all this stuff. And there's just like a message behind it. And I love that shit. Like there's every time I listen to that album, there's something new I leave with that I didn't pick up from the previous listen. And I can't necessarily say that there's been that many projects that have dropped in the most recent years that I can listen to and have that same feeling that I would get when I would listen to hip hop and I was really diving into it for the first time back in like 2011.
That's what I'm saying, man. Migos dropped and they switched the game up, and it just, you know what I mean? Like we got to where we're at, but I feel like this is gonna,
like throughout that process, like,
and I don't feel like that's like I don't want to discredit that whole everything that came from that. You know what I mean? Like there's artists that I do and don't like that have had huge impacts. You know what I mean? Like Lil Uzi came from that kind of sound being acceptable. Like all of these big names came from these kinds of different sounds being acceptable. and that's incredible in itself. But like, I feel like the bars are gonna come back heavy this year.
Well, look at what albums were nominated for the Grammys in 2021 that were albums that dropped last year. Like whoever is the commission at the Grammys and the decision makers that decided to go forward and nominate for the entire category a handful of albums that were all technically impressive albums, just as far as like the style of hip hop that it was, is kind of impressive, because usually the Grammys would be rewarding like albums that had the most commercial and mainstream success. But even this year, like Nas won the Grammy, and Nas has actually never won a Grammy, which maybe people could argue that maybe this album wasn't necessarily the one out of his entire catalog that actually was like the Grammy winner. Of course, it was a good album.
That speaks to the system changing.
But Nas won, like the other nominees were like Royce da 5'9", Jay Electronica, like Freddie Gibbs was nominated for a Grammy this year. Like there was no fucking Iggy Azalea, Macklemore. Like I respect the Macklemore. I always feel like the Macklemore slander should not be tolerated. But you know, I think that hip hop is, I feel like we really got hit hard in 2017 when we got that just giant, massive SoundCloud wave, which did produce some talents that have grown artistically and have lived on and are still maintaining their careers to this day. But it also was really like super in the forefront that kind of left a bad taste in a lot of, you know, the everyday hip hop fans' mouths. And I think that I feel like we got that so hard that era is over now. And I think that we're going back it's like, okay, let's try something different. And we tried it super hard. That we're like, okay, let's not do that again.
Well, and you can have a mix of that, because I feel like, you know, some of these melodic guys could be doing crazy hooks on some heavy bars. You know what I mean? Like you don't really see a lot of it's either one way or the other. You know what I mean? You don't see a lot of both. And when you do, it's when somebody that's a really good rapper is trying to fit the sound of like trap. It's never like a collaboration.
I'm sure there's examples. I can't really think of them off the top of my head, but I feel like just about everybody has collaborated at this point. Actually, an interesting duo that seems to produce really good records is J. Cole and 21 Savage. Like,
yeah, his when he came in on that feature, it came out of nowhere to me. I was like, oh my god, what?
You didn't know that was happening because
he just walked into the track.
It didn't have the track list on it, which is funny because on Saturday or Friday I was driving up to Lewisburg, and on the way out I listened to the album from start to finish, because the first time I listened to it was like 8 a.m. and on my phone, so I didn't really necessarily give it the
full appreciation you didn't get.
Like appreciate it, because I'm listening to it on my phone speakers and I'm like first thing in the morning just for the sake of running through it. But I listened to it on the drive out there and I was like, okay, yes, this is the best project that's dropped in hip hop so far this year. But it was interesting because on the track list it never said who was featured on any of the songs. And then about 3 hours later, when I was driving back, I was like, oh, now they must have updated the track list after the album was released with the featured artist. And I didn't even realize like Boss was on like 3 songs. He doesn't have any verses where he's rapping. He's just doing like background harmonies or a little like vocal like bridge sections and stuff. But yeah, that took me by surprise too when 21 Savage came in. But his verse is killer, man. Like 21 Savage obviously is not rapping at the technical skill of a J. Cole, but 21 Savage is like he's like a character. He's like a
it was like, also kind of a personal verse from him too.
Yeah, and J. Cole's, but 21 Savage's growth as an artist over the last 3 or 4 years has been nothing short of exceptional when you look at like how just like street and just gritty.
Seems like there's a lot of personal growth.
Yeah, exactly. But it's impressive to see. But it's funny because I find a lot of the topics throughout this J. Cole album too are like him referring to almost it's like people that he knew in his neighborhood or family members that are involved in street related stuff. And this person passed away. He sees this on the news. I feel like he really speaks to like the, you know, the obviously like the crime that is ongoing in the streets, and you know, this mothers are crying that this is happening, this guy got shot and all this stuff. It's a reoccurring topic I find in this album more than previous but it's interesting because he's always almost, you know, it's very clear that he's talking from a very observant outside perspective. But when he gets someone like 21 Savage on that record, My Life, you know, that's probably going to be a single. They're definitely going to do a music video for that. I think that I saw like on Genius, it was like the most searched up song on Friday or whatever. So believe like out of all these songs, I haven't really looked at the numbers, but I think that is definitely probably the most popular one, maybe because of the 21 Savage feature and whatever. But that 21 Savage verse is interesting because it's like he's coming in and he's speaking from the street. It's like J. Cole is like observing and reporting what's going on in the streets of these neighborhoods, and then 21 Savage is like actually there. You know, he plays it really good. He's a great addition to give you the perspective of someone who's actually lived it instead of someone who has like studied it and understands it really well.
Yeah, it was definitely good. Yeah, like it was a good kind of like, you know, reflection versus like perception kind of thing going on, where like, you know, he was talking about his experience and it's like, here's what I dealt with, you know, losing people and whatnot. Another thing that I liked on this album too was Moray did he did a hook from a Pharoah Monch song.
Yeah, exactly. So that's on that song. He did the chorus on this track. Yeah, I saw that too. It's a Pharoah Monch and I think Styles P song.
And he did it beautifully too. That was
it's so good. What was the line here? I'm looking at the 21 Savage verse. He's like, we don't participate in with that squash and shit. All we believe in is homicide. Like, it's just this toxic stuff that I know that deep down at this point in his life, he probably doesn't think like that, but he's referring to back to selling drugs, involved in gang activity in the streets. I remember watching his Breakfast Club interview in like 2016 when he was getting popular, and he was talking about how he's already lost like 10 friends due to street violence and all this shit. So, you know, he's really experienced it, but like, he's like, I got a good heart, so I send teddy bears every time we make their mamas cry.
Yeah, like, I know. That was like super hard line, but I was also damn.
Man, like for a lot of street rappers too, man. Like a lot of people that like a lot of rappers too, like when you're listening to that shit, like you might just like disregard what they're saying because of just how it's being delivered. But for the most part, when you really listen to it, and some artists this wouldn't apply to, but they are sometimes saying some clever shit. Like, I got a good heart, so I send teddy bears every time we make their mamas cry. Like, that's fucked up. And it's like a little bit more wittier than being like, we just killed the ops, and you know, we're not fucking, we don't care. But I thought it was cool when he was like, if you betray me, you dead to me. I disrespect you respectfully. I got some partners who left this earth. Maybe the pain made a better me. What was it? Oh, I feel like this. Yeah, just know, he's like, well, maybe the pain made a better me. Just know that their secrets is kept with me. I feel like the streets is in debt with me. Like that's crazy, bro. It's like he paid his dues to the streets and the people that come from the streets, and now they owe him at some point in the future. That's badass, 21 Savage.
It was definitely a solid fucking verse, man. I'm just reading that now. It's hilarious though when you read it and you see like his ad libs and brackets and straight up 21.
Yeah. His ad libs his ad libs definitely grew on me. I thought at first they were a little bit because usually when you're listening to an artist ad lib, that's like the word in the background that is supposed to, and like it's supposed to like elevate the energy of what they're saying in their verses, where 21 Savage's ad libs have always just been very monotone. 21.
Jump in the water, get wet with me. Straight up. 21.
Yeah. Like you can listen to like a Travis Scott where it's like straight up, and 21 Savage is like 21. He'll just say like, I fucking stabbed your
Sometimes cousin. It's like a comment on his like prior line. Like what he's saying here, give all the props to my mama, because no matter what, she always protected me. On God. I promise you it ain't no checking me, on God. But then he follows that up with jump in the water, get wet with me, straight up, 21.
I think that sometimes like artists like that, whoever their engineer is, they probably like those, like 21 Savage probably doesn't even do his ad libs. Like he doesn't lay his verse down and he's like, let me do the ad lib track. They probably have a folder with all of his different straight ups and 21.
I'm saying 21.
Straight up. They just place it in chemistry. It's like, all right, there's your verse. All right, put it. Dragging on God in there, put a 21 in there, you know, because the way that he flows on these verses, he always leaves that space for the ad lib to fit in. So it's he always got it up in there. But shout out to 21 Savage. And it's funny too, because on that track too, like there's like with the sample that they use in that song and just the sound of the instrumental and this 21's flow, it's almost like at one point he even taps into that same flow that he did on like How much money you got? A lot. How much cars you got? A lot. How many pay? A lot. Like it almost at some
And when
point.
you take the ad libs out, it's kind of crazy when you read it. I promise you, it ain't no checking me. Jump in the water, get wet with me. You want my money or want to have sex with me? Can't let the ops or the law get the best of me. Yeah, it is the same. It's funny. Well, he probably plays in a certain
It's
range. Like he's
pretty
not super like
slow, but
he's not, he doesn't play around too much with the construction of his music.
yeah. Moving on though, but still staying on the J. Cole topic here. What other artists drop an album that is inevitably going to go number one, but they're not doing any interviews? They're not fucking shoving it down your throat and doing all these radio press runs with all the singles on the radio. They just dropped the project all at once. He released an interlude as the lead single like 6 days beforehand. And what is he doing the week that his album drops? He's playing professional basketball in Rwanda for the Rwanda Patriots of the newly founded, I believe it's a brand new league. It's called the Basketball Africa League. So he's literally, yesterday, he played at age 36.
36?
He's 36 years old, and J. Cole made his professional basketball debut. I was watching some clips, dude. There was this little cheeky little assist that he did. He was chasing the ball down. He slipped it. He chased it down. He got it right before it went out of bounds. He passed it behind his back and to the homie. He did the layup. And but yeah, he made his debut playing professional basketball. And I know that I think when he was in university or college, he was a call-in sometimes for the team at the school that he attended. But obviously he didn't commit fully to that because he was more focused on music. But I think that he had like a game and like a celebrity game.
The project that at least that I first listened to, Friday Night Lights, he like the cover art for that is like a silhouette of him sitting on a basketball. Like he was definitely focused on that at that kind of breakout point in his life.
Yeah, well, basketball, I think that basketball's always been like a reoccurring theme in his music. And but it's insane because I think there was something last year too that I read, like the Detroit Pistons, they gave him a tryout. And there was been articles that have circulated on the internet over the last few years of J. Cole potentially actually getting some serious credibility from a professional basketball team. But it's unbelievable. It's like this guy is releasing arguably the best hip hop project of the year so far. And in that same week that project comes out, he makes his professional basketball debut. Like that has never happened. Like that's like when Michael Jordan played baseball. I think he played for like the Chicago.
Crazier than that, honestly.
Oh, it is because this guy's not even an athlete. Think about how many.
Well, he is an athlete. That's the thing, is that it's not really, it's a back burner thing,
But J. Cole is such a secretive person that is such a prestigious and high level artist, but you don't hear from him for a couple of years. He comes out with an album. He might do an interview. His last few albums, he didn't really do any radio interviews or anything. He might have done like a little mini documentary like he did with this album and stuff, but you don't really get to hear from him at all. And now he's out here playing professional basketball in Africa. And he's expected to play, I think, 3 to 6 games throughout the season that he's where he signed with this team here and Rwanda, the Rwanda Patriots. But yeah, he played a total of 17 minutes on Saturday. His team won 83-60. It was actually aired in the States here as well. He finished with 3 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 assists. And yeah, do you think that he's just like straight up having like one of the best weeks ever right now? Like,
I just feel like that's such an intense thing to be like, all right, I'm dropping this album that is definitely like, I mean, it's J. Cole, so it's not going to be received poorly, but it's definitely at a step with like the current sound. So let's see how that works. Now I'm going to go make my professional debut in basketball. Seems like a lot.
At an age where people,
like instead of like dropping a bomb and just sitting back and relaxing while it has its impact, he's like, oh, let's just rush into something else that's insane.
Picture being those guys that are playing against him.
I feel like he kind of got fed that basket, like the clip that you originally sent me. Like the guy like missed he was like on a breakaway and he missed the layup. Like he could have, unless that guy sucked at basketball too, like he could have easily fucking
Bro,
lay that in there.
Working all your life and being like, basketball is life. Ball is life. I'm waking up every day. I'm fucking hit. I'm sure J. Cole has had to train intensively like over the past year or so to get up to this point. But there's people like that are like starting off their professional basketball career. I would imagine if you're playing in Africa, your goal is either to get over to the US to play in the NBA, or you played in the NBA and now you're back here to end off your career. Either way, your claim to fame in life is I became a professional basketball player. J. Cole became J. Cole, and then at 36, when most professional athletes would most likely be retiring, debuts. Like a picture like being J. Cole, being a J. Cole fan growing up, listening to him as you're training, and there's probably like J. Cole's constant basketball theme in his music has probably caused a lot of people that are basketball players to listen to a lot of J. Cole when they're training, and they get to a certain pro level. They play in this African league, like my first little payday, whatever, as a professional basketball player, and they hit the court and they're playing J. Cole. That's pretty strange. But he's just treated like, that's the thing with sports, which makes sports so great, is that he's not treated any. I mean, off the court he might be, but when they're playing the game, at the end of the day, they're playing basketball. So you can't treat him like he's any level higher than the other people on the court. You know, you got to play against him, play with them.
Absolutely. That would be a weird dynamic though for like the people that are playing. You know what I mean? Having to be like, okay, this guy's like especially if you're in like an African basketball league, I bet like most of the people are from there. And I mean, if they have access to properly play basketball, I'm sure they have some sort of money. But like, it'd be so strange to be like, okay, here's this, millionaire American famous rapper guy.
Yeah, literally.
You know what I mean? Like, how do I? And that's what I was saying before. Like, I feel like that guy, like that got on a breakaway, fed him that pass. You know what I mean? You know, like he didn't really feed it to him.
Maybe that guy's trying to get a verse. He might get a mixtape on the low. So
yeah, it just seemed like he should have had that basket, but he didn't. And then he just kind of like J. Cole's like, oh.
Like I'm feeding that to J. Cole, man. I saw this account that, and for the most part, I mean, I've seen nothing but J. Cole praise online.
Wait a minute, J. Cole must have got fouled then if he got 3 points.
Yep. Yeah, exactly, because he did he shot 2 free throws, I believe.
But he missed a free throw.
Oh, he must have, yeah, because there's only one clip of him hitting the free throw, and then that was his 2 points, yeah. But I saw this.
I feel that.
You ever see that account? He always comments in academics' post, Grand Wizard Chat. Can't say the last word in the username, but like the whole thing, I'd be like everyone's like, J. Cole is just really out here living his best life. He's fucking killing it. And then they just posted up like this. It's like his stat card from the that game, and it's just like it's like a picture of him, and it says 3 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 17 minutes, and the thing says, "This man Jermaine Cole stinks," and the caption said J. Cole was just running around for real.
That is a lot of time to be playing. Well, it depends on your position too, though.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, like. Yeah, but that is a lot of time to be playing for. He got a couple assists, but I mean that doesn't really mean much. It depends.
I mean, give the guy a break. He should be retired if he was a professional basketball player.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a good age to be. Wow, that's crazy. I didn't even realize he was that old.
He's 36, and he's pushing his body to the limits of finally becoming a professional athlete, and then participating in that environment while in the midst of your week of releasing your album. It's crazy.
Just think if he stayed athletic, man, he could still have some like.
Oh, without a
good juice in them, like people like there's people like that are in their 30s, you know what I mean? It's like their testosterone has dropped significantly because they never did anything their whole life. But like if you keep yourself active, like you can prolong your serious manhood for quite some time. Like it's crazy. So like if he really was active this whole time, and you see that with like boxers and UFC fighters and stuff, they're actively training for years and years and years and years and years. So like their body needs to actually react and produce that testosterone to keep that pace up. But like if you're a real athlete, like being 36 and being athletic is nothing. But like if if you're just starting when you're 36 and you've been a sack of potatoes your whole life, like that's gonna be tough. But like,
And
I'm
I would
sure that
imagine J. Cole stays pretty active. I don't think he's a avid weed smoker, cigarettes, but I don't think he does any drugs. He doesn't. I'm sure he drinks every now
even
and
if
then.
you do that shit, like there's a lot like there's tons of professional athletes that smoke cigarettes and fucking smoke weed and shit. Like,
Yeah, I know. I just feel like he regularly exercises and stays in shape. Like I think that J.
yeah,
Cole is like has a very balanced lifestyle. I would think. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean it's showing right now. He's playing professional basketball, but his manager actually tweeted too. I saw this was posted before. His Twitter is at King of Queens. He tweeted, "I just hit Cole to talk about how I woke up to so many texts about his album." And this guy was leaving a scrimmage and he put like a bunch of laughing emojis and he wrote like he had his whole other job and shit. That's wild, bro. Like he dropped like his album is coming out and people are reacting to it and really taking it in and all these hip hop critiques are breaking it down and it's just like one of the biggest moments in hip hop so far this year. And he's just out in Africa scrimmaging with a professional basketball team. That's badass, man. Chase your dreams.
he must get a lot of Q-tips up his nose.
He definitely got a few Q-tips.
Unless they don't give a fuck in Africa.
Right. Tell the people your story about getting tested this week.
Oh, that was the worst, man. I mean, like COVID was so sparse here, like it wasn't like a real worry. And we there was an exposure. Yeah, come on down, Mom. There was an exposure at Walmart, and I had been there, and I wasn't sure if I was there on the day. There was an exposure on the 8th. It would kind of make sense that I was there that day because that was like the day before I was working that week. But I wasn't sure. Yeah, so I went and got tested, and I had never had that done before. And the guy shoved, like it was some kid that was definitely younger than me. And he was like, "Hi, my name is Matt. I'm going to do your test today." I was like, "Oh, it's my first time." He was like, "Oh," like he kind of looked worried.
Like, me too.
Yeah, probably. And he shoved the thing. It felt like it was like by my eye, like it was real back in my head. And it just almost, I don't know if you've ever been punched in the nose before, but it felt like I got punched in the nose from the inside of my face. It was just the weirdest pressure feeling ever. And I was like, my eyes were watering like crazy and it felt like my nose was bleeding. And then he like walked away from me with the Q-tip in my nose because he told me, he was like, "We're gonna have to leave that in there for 5 seconds." I was like, "All right." And he left the Q-tip in my nose and walked away, and my eyes were closed because they were like watering like crazy. And he's like talking to the lady that's across the table, and he's like, "What do I do if there's resistance and I can't pull it out?" And I was like, "Oh, what the fuck?" And he came back over, and as soon as he put his hand on the Q-tip, I grabbed him by the wrist and I pulled his wrist out. Like I pulled it out of my face. And then the lady comes over and she's like, "Yeah, I don't know if he did that right, so we're gonna have to do this again." And I was like, "Fuck." And then I had to do it on the other side, and she did it, but it wasn't as bad, but it was still pretty rough. I was not a fan of that. Like I know Joe Rogan did some comedy shows and everybody got rapid tested beforehand. And I was like, I probably wouldn't do that just to enter a place. Fuck that, man. It sucked.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, at the end of the day, the amount of people that they're probably testing inside of the venue the venue's weird way of wording that, but like wherever it was, it said it was at Center 200, which is a venue. I would imagine that sometimes there's going to be incidents when they hire somebody new and then that person is just, doing their first few swabs and, they still got questions they're going to fuck up. But I feel like that's not really necessarily a place where you should be able to fuck up like that. Cause that sounds like an uncomfortable, and I've actually never been tested, throw the backlash at me if you want, but I've never been around anybody that tested positive or experienced symptoms. I've been relatively safe with my way of approaching everything for the most part. And, I've never really, felt like I needed to get tested. And the thought of having something stuck so far up my nose isn't necessarily really appealing. and it just sounds scary. So if the time comes, if I have to cross that bridge, I will, whatever. But I'm kind of hoping I can just get that double shot of that vaccine, baby, and then hopefully that can just
very hopeful for that. I saw that we're supposed to be ready for that in June. I think
They just dropped it down to 35 in Nova Scotia. So next step I would imagine would be they bring it down
20
to 30 or 30 to 25 to 35, and then we'll be in the next category of people that they can bring up.
I'll be right back. I gotta go pee.
All right, man. Go drop that urine, baby. What I was going to talk about next, hopefully it doesn't take too long here, but I wanted to bring up the fact that Chicago drill rapper Lil Reese has unfortunately been shot as of this happened yesterday morning, I believe, around 9:50 here. I got a little write-up here. I'll just read it off. But yeah, Lil Reese, Chicago artist. He was involved in gunfire yesterday morning at a parking garage in Chicago as he was allegedly in the midst of purchasing weed, from what I was reading here. And the vehicle that he jumped in to go buy the weed out of was a stolen Dodge Durango that was reported as stolen earlier in the morning. Basically, footage was uploaded online, which seemed to be recorded by the person who had their vehicle stolen, showing Lil Reese in and out of consciousness on the ground and bleeding out of his eye. He and Lil Reese told the police he was inside the vehicle that was stolen, and he was directing the drivers where to park inside of this parking garage so he could safely purchase the weed from them. And shots were fired by, I believe, the people who tracked the stolen vehicle, the owners of the vehicle. They had the tracking on the car so they could see where it was. They pulled up. I guess they were armed, and they began shooting at them. They got them. I guess the guy actually pulled some of the guys that were in the car out of there and started beating them and everything after they were shot. But there is 2 videos online, one from like an aerial view of where of the situation as it was unfolding. It kind of showed them on the sidewalk and then the police running into the parking garage and everything. But there's another even more graphic video. I don't even know if it's on YouTube. I feel like it's almost like too graphic to be on YouTube, but was on there yesterday. It shows Lil Reese basically just kind of struggling to. It's pretty bad, man. It's like leaking out of the mouth, bleeding. If you guys aren't familiar with Lil Reese, he became popular back in like 2012. At the time, he was one of the bigger artists that were coming out of Chicago, alongside Chief Keef and Lil Durk, who musically continued on to have a promising career, where Lil Reese just kind of always decided to stick closer to his Chicago roots and inevitably just continue getting in trouble. Which he got shot 2 years ago as well in the neck, and he got out of that and everything. But I'm just talking about Lil Reese and that whole incident there. I was just kind of explaining the situation, how him and those guys stole a vehicle. Allegedly, he was actually in that vehicle. I don't know if
just
they
to go buy weed
or
or something.
He was buying weed from him. I mean, that's what he told the police. So who knows? It probably could be a little bit more complex than that. Maybe he was buying an extensive amount of weed to sell or distribute or whatever. Maybe it wasn't just for consumption purposes. Maybe they were just making that up. I don't know. But the people that were shooting at him were the ones that had their vehicle stolen. So they had a tracking device in the car from an app on their phone or whatever. And they tracked it to this parking garage and they started shooting at them. And the guy who shot at them, he actually pulled them out of the car, I believe, too, and started beating them. So they fucking stole the car. I don't know. Lil Reese himself, I don't think he was in the driver's seat, stole it, but it's just unfortunate to see someone like him, like back in the day where he was on Chief Keef's breakout song, I Don't Like, and he had the song with Drake and Rick Ross, and he was, relatively.
He was signed to what was it, Rock?
He was signed to a major, I believe. Like he was on a.
Was it Rock Nation or Rock something? I don't know.
He was a Rock Nation. He signed to probably just like a standard major. I don't know if it was Atlantic or something like that.
No, it was like.
But anyway, I believe they were all taken to the hospital. I don't think anyone died. If you see that video of Lil Reese, though, you get it on YouTube, but he looks fucked up. He can barely sit up. He keeps falling over as the police are trying to help him up and everything. But he looks like he's on he's having his last breath.
Def Jam, that's what it was. He was signed to Def Jam.
Oh yeah, Def Jam. Def Jam has a pretty long roster of rappers and stuff, but still, that's one of the biggest labels he could get signed to in hip hop. But I would imagine he's probably not with them anymore. I think he dropped
No.
an album last year. It didn't necessarily do that well. But then people were clowning him for selling like 4,000 copies first week. But I'm like, for Lil Reese, who I have not heard of musically in like 5 or 6 years, like that's not bad. There's certain I'm sure Roof Rap doesn't sell more than that first week. You just don't you don't see his numbers because he's not really someone that's covered by like mainstream blogs and stuff. But obviously Lil Reese is more so known these days for just getting into beefs online on Instagram Live, mostly with like 6ix9ine and shit. But did you see 6ix9ine's return to his Instagram page after this news recently? You didn't see any of that shit. So he posted. So 6ix9ine, if you guys aren't familiar, has beefs with basically any street rapper that he can beef with, just to basically get himself more attention and surround himself by a bunch of security to just kind of make fun of them for not getting at him. And, whatever, as long as he's still alive, he will probably just continue to do this. But he went on Instagram and he clowned Lil Reese since the shooting. First, he commented on Academic's post about it. He said, "Little Tim out here wilding." Little Tim is the guy that is Quando Rondo's friend that shot King Von. And then he commented again. He said how he got shot before Quando. And then he tagged Little Durk in Academic's post as well. And he said, "Buy your man a car. You got him looking crazy in that video." And then 6ix9ine proceeded to go on his Instagram story. He said, "The 6ix9ine curse is real. Rest in peace to all the rappers in heaven." And then he created a GoFundMe to raise $2,000. And the picture was just of like an older car. I'm not gonna. This is kind of fucked up, but it is. I gotta give him some points for being, especially Lil Reese is gonna be okay. This is kind of funny. The GoFundMe was help Lil Reese buy a car, and he screenshot a post on his Instagram, and he made the caption. He said, "What happened today is not funny. Let's all chip in and help him buy his own car."
Well, apparently, initially it seemed like,
and he spelled "buy" wrong. In the GoFundMe, he put BY.
Apparently Lil Reese is fine. I'm pretty sure he just got beat up.
He was in fair condition, so.
Well, I don't think he got hit like straight on.
He got grazed, didn't he?
His eye got grazed or something like along here, and that's why his head was bleeding. Like in that video, you showed me a video of the aftermath of that, and it seemed like he got whacked, like, you know what I mean, like it looked like he was bleeding out of his mouth, like he got like shot in the lungs or something. It was coming up, but like apparently he only got grazed in the eye. That blood was just kind of dripping down his face and falling off him, like he just got the shit kicked out of him. And I noticed something too when I was watching that, man.
It's what is it?
He's got like the skinniest goddamn legs I've ever seen in my life.
He's kind of had it bad the last year or so, especially with his the whole, like, I don't think he has a tough guy persona. I think he's genuinely someone who was raised and involved in street activity his whole life and got some got some fame from his music ability and stuff, and just the authenticity of the Chicago drill scene and how fascinating it was to a lot of people. Chief Keef and him and Lil Durk. Chief Keef moves out. He does more, his music kind of resonates more people. He puts more energy into that. Lil Durk obviously always was musically focused, and everything goes in and out of jail. But Lil Durk has never been as big as he is right now, which is incredible. And Lil Reese kind of just had his moment. He probably could have went harder, or could have just stayed out of this kind of activity. I don't know why he continues to get involved in incidences where he's like riding around people with stolen vehicles in Chicago. Like, it's fucked up, man. It's like you could have removed yourself out of that situation, I would imagine, a million times over. You're still here doing some fuckery. I mean, I'm not someone who has any kind of experience or background in any kind of street activity whatsoever. I'm just on the outside looking in, but I'm thinking, like, you have had opportunities, I would imagine, tenfold over the last decade to get out of these situations. You're still here. So obviously he makes the choice to put himself in harm's way from time to time, and look where it's getting him. So I hope that Lil Reese can find a way. Maybe this could be a little bit of a wake up call for him. But I've never really listened to much of his music. I'd love to just dive into a Lil Reese album start to finish sometime and just fucking get hard as shit. I listened to 1017 Thug from start to finish today. I don't know why I did that, but respects. You look like you're reading something right now.
I am. I'm just reading the third topic that you sent me because I didn't actually get to watch the content of that response.
Yeah, and I copy and pasted that from a article, but basically what he's talking about here is so Joe Budden officially ended the Joe Budden podcast. I don't know if it's over. He's just gonna bring back the people that he had on with him when Rory and Mal were on their little worker strike there. But
seems like he's got some guys with him because he addressed their response.
Yeah, he did a new episode, I think, that came out today. And then he was on live earlier today as well. I didn't watch the whole thing, but yeah, he fired Rory and Mal. They had about a good, I think, 5-year run. I think the podcast started in 2016, right before Joe Budden dropped his last album. And then he just transitioned fully into media personality from lyricist, top tier rapper, who wasn't getting the most commercial success. So he went into the media space and absolutely, has blossomed in that space since then, although he's been a part of numerous projects and shows that I think all would have been very successful in the long run. Everyday Struggle still to this day is, people talk about that like that's one of the best hip hop oriented shows of all time. And I think that him and Academics have something coming down the pipeline because of the way that Academics is always going on his Twitch streams and stuff and just referring to, he knew that this was coming, and Academics is on fire, bro. I don't know if you see he goes on these Twitch streams like every second night, and I get all the clips from these streams. He goes on there for like 2.5 hours, and he just addresses all the news that's going on in hip hop. I think the best way to keep up to date with just news that's happening and stuff that's going on in a hip hop space is just to tap in with those Academic streams, because he's covering everything. But he watched like that whole Rory and Mal podcast, and he just tears them to shreds. He hates Rory and Mal. Him and Rory had like this super corny beef where like Rory sent him like a letter and shit, and Academics was just like, Academics was celebrating. He's been celebrating like for this whole week since Joe put out that clip of him basically firing Rory on air, which I saw Joe has kind of retraced his steps from that clip that you were just mentioning. I'm thinking that you might have saw where he kind of addressed that little clip that came out of where he like fired them for breaching their contract and everything. And that makes sense. I mean, he was probably extremely angry in that moment where he said that, and now he's cooled down. But I don't know. I think that at first everybody was clowning Rory and Mal, but now I'm starting to see a lot of the internet kind of side with them, especially after that video came out today. From what I'm seeing here, and I haven't really done the deep dive in the whole situation. I wasn't really one, especially over the last year, to like listen to like the whole Joe Budden podcast from start to finish when they were dropping once a week. But I think the issue was like their pay was that they weren't like on a salary from the Joe Budden podcast where they were co-hosting. I think that they were getting paid based off of the revenue that came in from like advertising dollars and like Patreon subscribers and everything. So I think they just wanted to look at the numbers and see everything that was coming in so they could just double check to make sure
that they're getting their percentage.
Yeah, I think that they might have just been seeing over a while how much bigger that their show was getting, and maybe their pay wasn't increasing
with that. Yeah.
The same.
The ironic thing about that is because that's the exact same reason basically why Joe Budden left Everyday Struggle.
Exactly.
And because he was like, they were like, hey, wear this pair of Nikes. And he was like, all right, like, what am I getting off of this? You know what I mean? And then it's like, their show grows exponentially. And then they're like, what am I getting off of this? And he's like, no. You know what I mean? Like you can't play both sides of that fence.
I think that Joe Budden, I think the appeal of Joe Budden is that he's just such a loose cannon that you become interested in his opinion based off of he's so fucking contradicting sometimes, because he has a podcast, and the platform and the premise of the podcast is to, for the most part, address topics that are prevalent in hip hop in that culture. And there's so many times where there's these popular topics from clips that I've seen where either Rory or Mal will bring them up and they start talking about it, giving their 2 cents. And then they ask Joe what his take is. And he's like, I have none. I don't want to talk about that. And then
he also always wants to contradict what they're saying just to create content.
And then he'll blatantly say he's just doing that just for the sake of doing that. He did that interview with Adam 22 last week. I watched the whole thing. It was fun to watch, but there was just certain blatant things, and I could tell that even Adam was like, this doesn't make any sense for him to even disagree with me on this. And then like he'll just give you could say the most obvious thing ever, and then Joe Budden will be like, no, that's wrong. And then you'll be like, what do you mean? And then he just won't have an answer, and then the person will just continue kind of explaining why it's such an obvious thing. And then Joe Budden will like have the chance to think about it and then kind of figure out a way to just be devil's advocate for the sake of doing it. But I do think that he's like just very conservative when it comes to money, because I think as his whole career, he's a very talented songwriter and lyricist, but he never really got like the.
He never been respected, but he also always bit the hand that fed him. And then
doing it time after time.
And then when it comes to somebody doing that to him, it's just funny that his response is exactly what he's resented forever. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The exact thing that he's opposed forever is his response to the exact same thing. So I feel like it kind of speaks to things change as you climb the totem pole. You know what I mean? There's reasons why he was given the answers and given the the percentages and the percentages and the answers that he's always been given. And now he's seeing the other side of that, where it's like he wants his profits to grow too. So why am I going to tell these people what they're getting extra every year? I'm going to rake that in because it's my time now. You know what I mean? And, it's human nature to be greedy. You know what I mean? Take for yourself to sustain for yourself. That's just human nature. But it is funny when that he could reflect on all the times that the exact same thing happened to him and he was opposed to that. You know what I mean? And now he's doing that to other people.
He didn't realize why certain employers and corporations might have been doing that to him until he might have gotten in the position where he has people that are relying on him to pay them.
But the funny thing is that it seems like he's not even thinking about it when he's in the position that's feeding.
Yeah, because you get fucked over for so long, and his perspective is probably not even being fucked over. It's just a contract that he signs that he thought he was bringing more work.
Well, no, I feel like he did take it personally, and he did feel like he was fucked over because he talked about that a lot on the podcast. I used to listen to that podcast every day until it left Spotify. Or not every day, but every episode. And he always spoke about how he kind of felt like he got fucked over. I mean, I feel like he was more not realized, but he understood it better now than he did then. But he still kind of spoke about it in a tone that he felt disrespected by what happened. You know what I mean? Like even being signed to like Eminem, it was like he didn't try to like not show him praise, but he tried to. Like he spoke about it in a way where he was like, I didn't get what I had anticipated out of this. You know what I mean? Like he felt like he had been disrespected. And then it's funny that in, he can't see that in retrospect when it comes to dealing with his own employees.
Yeah, I think that it appears that he's very obviously someone who is like it's not like he's functionally very toxic. He is aware of that. Like when he did, after that clip came out, I'm not subscribed to the Patreon, but from what I was gathering, I think that clip that came out when he was like, did you hear that when he was like unloading on Rory and Mal and addressing it, and he just basically was saying that they're both fired, or Rory, you're fired before breach of your contract. Did you hear that clip?
No.
So that is like that was like what said that was like what confirmed it. He was trending on Twitter. That was the official clip that came out that confirmed that, their partnership and their collaboration on this podcast was officially terminated. And you know, he just seems like, I don't know. It's just like but they weren't even there. I was always under the impression that they were actually physically there when he fired them, until I watched a video earlier and they were like, there was like a photo of Joe and he's just sitting on the couch by himself and he has Parks across the room from him just recording it or whatever, and he said that they're both fired or whatever. But this is like, he worked at Complex, he worked at Revolt, two big corporations that were investing money into believing in his ideas that he was bringing to the table to attract attention and to grow something with. And I don't know what happened with this show at Revolt, the State of the Culture show. Obviously, we know what happened with Everyday Struggle, but the Joe Budden podcast, like the Joe Budden Media Network that he has created, because he has other podcasts that are under him now that both have their episodes uploaded to his YouTube channel as well. And regardless of who he hires and fires, that Joe Budden podcast will remain and will continue producing episodes. But it'll be interesting to see what Rory and Mal do. I'm looking forward to watching that thing that they just put out there. But
yeah, that was
I don't know, man.
Behind some sort of paywall too. I'm not sure where you would even
get access. It seems like
to
it's uploaded to the YouTube, but
is it? So yeah, somebody probably put it there.
Yeah, just like an account that probably just recorded and re-uploaded. I saw it up there twice, but yeah, they basically said in response to Joe's accusation, because I think there's something where there's like this discrepancy of like, they believe that there was like $400,000 that is owed to them that was just like skipped over by the accountant, and basically wanted to just audit the finances and see all the money that was coming in. It says here that Budden claimed that his co-hosts were trying to audit him despite not having any ownership in the podcast. Yes, okay, I understand that, and that might not make them entitled to looking at the overall finances that come in from the program. But at the same time, if their pay is determined by the amount of advertisers and the amount of Patreon subscribers and all this,
just the income, if their
income is based on the income. So they want a little bit of transparency. So it said on Saturday, Rory and Mal dropped a response to Joe's accusations, and in the conversation, they revealed a key piece of information. As Rory and Mal explained, they were being paid based on a percentage of the podcast earnings. So that could come from their Spotify deal, like the Patreon subscribers, YouTube ad revenue, sponsorships. They always have the Cash App thing in the corner or whatever. So I'm sure all of that coming together, and that number is that they provide to these sponsors is based off of the attention the podcast gets. So as Rory and Mal explained, they were being paid based on a percentage of podcast earning. As a result, they wanted to take a look at the accounting to make sure they were being paid the proper amount. However, Joe allegedly didn't like this and ultimately fired them from it. So like, if you're firing your friends, as you were referring to them as your podcast co-hosts, because they just want to be transparent and double check and make sure they're just getting paid the right amount, even if that might have rubbed you the wrong way, you fire them? Like, I feel like it's hard for Joe Budden, just based off of this information, to just create some kind of case that is believable to the general audience, because not everyone's going to go watch.
Oh, definitely fucked him over, man. It's his foot's in the shoe now.
But what's crazy? He was responding to the tweets of people shitting on him after he released that clip of him firing them on his Patreon. And he was like, yeah, I am toxic. Like, oh yeah, I am. I do ruin. I do burn every bridge. And he's like, laughing emojis. Like, hey, gotta go to my foot massage now or something like that. It's just like, he's just like, fuck you guys. Light it all on fire. Get angry. I'm going to move along and just be this selfish person and whatever, because there is a percentage of my audience that's a fan of me because I'm just bluntly honest like that. And I'm interested to see what they have said, where it goes from here, if that continues to be an ongoing beef. It almost looks like Joe kind of offered his peace offering to them, but whatever.
I don't know, man. And honestly, I feel like he wasn't all of the entertainment value of his podcast. Like, I liked listening to Mal and I liked listening to Rory for,
different
opinions. And I don't think he realizes that he's part of a trio and he's one of a trio.
Yeah, because he believes
so. If
podcast, he's like, these people are watching this because of me as an artist. I think the Mall even had he said something that was like that, like Joe constantly was saying that he was confident in the fact that a lot of the people paying attention to the podcast were interested because of his career as a rapper. And then Maul was like, we've done live podcast events where people bought tickets to come out and see us do it live. And I can tell you for a fact, you were not getting this type of attention when you were a rapper as you are now doing this podcast. But, you know.
Yeah, no, and a lot of people listen to it. Like, I think Maul was probably my favorite on the podcast, followed by Rory, followed by Joe. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't the main attraction.
Would you prefer to listen to a podcast with Maul and Rory in comparison to one with Joe and whoever?
Yeah. As long as because their podcast was like Joe bringing up topics, like you said, not really having a whole lot to say on it, and then they would talk about it. You know what I mean? So you can't have a podcast where one guy just brings up topics. You know what I mean? And then if he has other people there, it's not the same product. Like, they were almost the opinion of the product. You know what I mean? Like, they spoke, I think, more than he did. And he did speak on certain things that he was more knowledgeable on. But then he would bring up kind of more general topics and say nothing, and they would speak a bunch.
There was a lot of clips I remember being pushed out about very popular topics in hip hop that he would basically announce it, or someone would bring it up. He'd have limited things to say, and he would allow Rory and Maul to kind of get the wheel spinning and the dialogue started, and they go back and forth, and he agrees and disagrees. And then I feel like they needed to almost like inform him about what the topic was, so then he could have enough time by listening to them talk about it to then form his own opinion and then chime in at the end of it. And, you know, whatever, man. It'll be interesting to see that unfold. But so what I was telling you before, switching topics here, Jack Harlow, that incident that took place in a nightclub during the Kentucky Derby that was going on 2 weekends ago, where there was a shooting. And obviously, Jack Harlow's not necessarily an artist that you would ever really be pictured to be kind of involved in a situation like this. But some more information has came out about that incident 2 weeks ago when he was in the club and the shooting took place. He was okay, but it was actually a member of his private club collective, and is actually his DJ that he would perform with that was backing him up when he was on stage ever since 2018, who has now been charged with the murder for the alleged killing of Kasmira Nash, who was a bartender at the club that they were at. She was fatally shot during that incident during the Kentucky Derby weekend a couple weeks back. And allegedly he shot this girl because she started physically hitting him, I believe. I was reading this article where that girl, who unfortunately passed away, her friend was recalling the situation, and I guess she went up to Jack Harlow's DJ here, and she was believing that he was responsible for the killing of her friend that actually took place in August of 2020, which is still an ongoing case where they have not really reached any kind of conclusion or anything. That they're still looking for the person that killed this other person. But she started hitting him because of that, and his response was he shot her in front of the club, in the club, in front of hundreds of people, and he just essentially walked out of the club. But he turned himself in a few days ago. She started hitting him because she believed that he was responsible for shooting and killing her friend, Tori Cortez Foray, back in August 2020. And apparently this previous shooting happened following a fight inside a club as well. He turned himself in for the shooting 2 weekends ago, and he's most likely going to claim self-defense as the bartender attacked him first. And he is a DJ. He was a part of Jack's team since he's touring with him since 2018. And actually, the police just made a statement as well saying that I don't even think I have the DJ's name in the notes here, but whatever. He's a person of interest in that August 2020 shooting as well. So that's pretty interesting. Like, Jack Harlow's been touring with this guy since 2018. He might have actually shot this other person last summer. And then this girl comes up to him, starts hitting him in the club where he's there with Jack, hanging out as someone who is a close friend of his. And he turns around and just kills this girl inside of the club. And it's interesting because I was reading an article about the investigation with this previous shooting in last August, that this DJ might be associated with, and like the family is like they're aware, like they know that there was tons of people around when he shot this other person last summer, and it's obvious that it was outside of this club. There was tons of people around, but nobody will come forward. And this, the person who's passed away, their family has been told by numerous people that they've heard they know people that know who killed their son or whatever. And but now he's a person of interest in this other shooting, so he might be getting charged with murder for two people if there could be more evidence. And that's the
Yeah,
situation.
I feel like the thing that I hate about this story is that it's being attached to Jack Harlow,
Mhm.
because like, I've designed a significant amount of your cover artwork, but if I went and shot somebody, that doesn't mean it's your fault.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And if you invite me out somewhere and I shoot somebody in my presence, it doesn't mean it's your fault. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this is, and it shouldn't be, because like I feel like this would normally, if it was average man shoots average woman, this wouldn't be a story. You know what I mean? But it's Jack Harlow's DJ shot a woman, and now he's going to catch all this flack for having this guy around that, just because you're willing to fucking shoot somebody over something stupid doesn't mean you're going
I
to
thought he
shoot.
was just inside the club during a moment where there were shots fired. I didn't realize that it was someone that he walked in the club with. And the thing was, like you mentioned a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this, I believe, because it was Jack Harlow, who is the popular artist from Kentucky that was in a Kentucky nightclub during the Kentucky Derby weekend, which is a popular event there. They didn't pat him down nor pat down anyone in his crew. So essentially, some people look to him as who they're going to blame for this incident because he brought somebody in that he was responsible for to a degree. Not
I feel like you
responsible for,
can't be. I
and
feel
I
like
don't
that's a
think that
stupid thing. Just
it
because
is
somebody's
stupid. But
with you
I don't
doesn't
think
mean
that's
that
at
you
all.
can, what I
But
mean?
that's like the perspective that, or the narrative that some people might run with, because it's like Jack Harlow brought this guy in with him knowing that he wasn't going to get patted down because he's the artist that is coming into the club, and he didn't get patted down, and he had a weapon on him
But
that
it's not
ended.
like Jack Harlow was like, this guy's going to shoot the bartender tonight. You know what
No,
I mean? Like, it wasn't like a
everybody should get patted
premeditated.
down no matter what, because this is not the first time shit like this has happened with artists and stuff in the club and the people that are in their entourage. So everybody should get treated the same way, man. It's what a
Yeah.
little fucking pat down. Come on.
Yeah,
But
but I feel like it's stupid to try and throw this on Jack Harlow's name.
no, he's fine. Like, nobody really is blaming him for anything for the vast majority of things. Like, he's an innocent dude. Like, if anything, he's gonna get a new DJ and move along for the most part. And he has put out a statement just saying that anything that, like, everything that happened inside of that club 2 weekends ago should have not happened. It could have been avoided. He's actually been in touch with the girl's family, that the girl that passed away. He's been in touch with her family and everything, and I think that they've been receptive to him, and they've had a conversation and everything. So he's supporting them. Obviously, like you said, he has no direct involvement with the situation at all. It's just a guy that he unfortunately had a business relationship with, which now will be terminated. Especially someone like Jack Harlow, who he's a product. He's a artist that's signed to a major. He's had his Billboard Hot 100 hits. He's mainstream artist at this point. He's in the public eye. He doesn't need to be around any of that bullshit. He's not a street rapper. It's not something that would be expected for his name to even be involved with. So essentially, he's not probably gonna. He's smart, dude. He's not gonna have guys like that bring him back down. So he'll keep progressing. This guy, who knows what his fate will be? I'm sure he won't necessarily do anything to further incriminate his friend here. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if he'd get questioned or anything. But it's a crazy situation. What would happen, man? What would happen if Jack Harlow was pulled into court for this for the trial of his former DJ and he has to take the stand? What happens then? I mean, he's not a street
Well,
guy.
that's what I was
What happens
saying.
if
Like,
he
I
breaks
feel
the
like he's
street code?
completely unrelated to the topic. You know what I mean? Like, it's
He might get questioned though to a degree.
absolutely. And I couldn't see a case where he's not, especially because he's such a high profile figure. But I feel like this is completely unrelated. You know what I mean? To his rap career. That's what I was saying. It just sucks that this kind of story has to blow up as like Jack Harlow's DJ. It's not like this guy killed this woman. What the fuck? It's like, oh, he was related to this celebrity? Whoa. Like, this is still a tragedy, whether or not Jack Harlow was involved. You know what I mean? But it wouldn't get that kind of coverage without his name being attached to it.
Yeah, well, I think it'll be, what do they say? It'll be dust in the pan. It'll be piss in the pan. I'm gonna piss in a pan. It'll be swept under the rug. It'll be swept under that fucking rug, brother. No one will be talking about this in 3 months. They'll forget about it. But
Yeah, that's
he's
what I'm
fine.
saying. It's fucked. Because it's still
But,
somebody died.
Oh, of course. All right.
That's what I mean. Like, this happens every day. You know what I mean?
I'm just talking about, like the correlation with the long-term effects the situation has on Jack Harlow's career will be, little to none because he has no direct involvement in the situation. To listen to hot takes here, Kodak Black drops the Haitian Boy Kodak EP, consistent of 8 tracks. Did you listen to that at all?
I listened to it twice.
Oh, it was twice. There you go.
But it was like in 2 different situations where I like couldn't fully listen to it. But what I did gather from it is that it's quite introspective at some points, which I find he usually is. Like, people really discredit how talented he is.
Yeah.
And like displaying that quality, like being able to self-reflect. You know what I mean? But I actually kind of liked it. There was a couple songs where it seemed like he was almost trying to play with his flow a little bit and seemed off. Maybe that was just because I was listening to it at work, so maybe I was just distracted. But it seemed like he was doing some kind of weird stuff.
He's been getting a lot of praises for this album. I saw one post.
It's pretty good. It's a pretty good album for Kodak, for sure.
Yeah, it's just like his first actual project since he came out of jail earlier this year. I don't think he's being considered. And then I don't think it's being considered as like an album release, but it is a nice little project on the side here. I think once the J. Cole steam dies down a little bit, I'll do a deeper dive into that album and listen to it a little bit more. But there's a few songs that I really liked on it. I'm trying to find my phone where it's at here, but I believe there was a song on it too that was like completely in Spanish. Either that or he was not articulating his words well at all. But I'm pretty confident it was in Spanish. There was a funny song. There was a song too that had a funny line. He was like, "If this bitch comes over to my house," he was like, "If you're coming over to my house, you got to get a COVID test," or something like that. That was funny, but I just like how I think that like for the most part, like he does this like I know, and it's like, but he's honestly like everything he says is from the soul, and I think he's kind of like the originator in the more popular street soul genre that has kind of been put to the forefront right now. That you see people like Rod Wave, Lil TJ, that 2C guy, like people that are like rappers that are just talking about street related issues, but they're doing it in a sing-song way where their lyrics are all coming from a place of experience and they're genuine, but it is kind of like rap, but it's melodic and it's not always like essentially perfect with like the tone and pitch in their voice, but it is just authentic and that's what makes people like it. But I feel like Kodak's almost like the originator of some of those kind of sounds. But
he's a huge influencer. He's like Chief Keef, but better.
Yeah, to a degree, like, a little bit more. That like has lasted a little bit longer in the mainstream eye. But anytime Chief Keef hops on anything, everyone's gonna look at it. Chief Keef always has weird shit these days to do with something like Young Gravy and shit. But like, the song is
He actually had
fine,
a
dope.
he had a crazy, not crazy, but he had a pretty good track with Lil Nar and Ski
I didn't
Mask
even
the
get to
Slump
listen to
God.
it.
I listened to it a couple times. I liked it, and I like that. I just like to see Chief Keef around because I feel like you don't get enough of it. That's like solid. Depends on who he's working with, but like that mix up was good. And look, like I've been following Lil Nar for like a long ass time, just because like I think he might have popped up in my Explore feed because he was holding like an RPG, like a fucking rocket launcher, and I was like, what the
I
fuck?
remember that picture. Yeah, I remember that.
And I
He
like
did something
followed him.
crazy too. Did he like get like he voluntarily got not shot, but didn't he like get hit with like a fuck? I don't know what it was, but like he volunteered himself up for like some dangerous activity, and like it looked almost like it was staged and fake. But Lil Nar, yeah, I remember listening to him a few years ago. But this Kodak Black album, I need to run it back a few times, not gonna lie, but that song Basement on Fire, I remember I saved the songs that I liked off of it so I could just shout them out. Behind Round the Roses, Basement on Fire, Dirty K, and Oracle. Oracle's the one that is just straight a cappella the whole thing. He posted a video of him just like reciting the lyrics of that before it came out. I think he addressed like some kind of beef with NBA YoungBoy on that, how he like used to be a fan of him and now he's whatever. But um, yeah, I thought it was a solid project. I always like to listen to whatever Kodak has to offer. I actually wrote this down here. Do you think that since he first came out on the scene, when you think about it, Kodak has been around for about 7 years now. He first started kind of getting it. I remember the first time I heard of Kodak was there was a video of Drake on a private jet doing like the dance that Kodak did in one of his videos. And I think it was expected for them to do a song at the time, but they never did. But actually, I saw this article where it was Drake. Kodak actually posted this onto his Instagram. Drake reached out to him, and he said that he was inspired by everything that he does. And I forget what he said exactly. And Kodak was like, "LOL, thanks, homie, sign me" or something. But then they agreed. Like he posted the DMs. Drake probably is at a point where he knows if he messages essentially any artist that he hasn't already done a song with or like somewhat of a close relationship with, that they might post it as just promo for the shit. Especially like Kodak, he just put out a new EP. Drake DMs him after probably listening to it, and he's like, you know, Drake called him a poet. That's what he said. Um, but they said that I remember I looked at the DM. They said they were going to get some work in. So I would love to hear a Drake and Kodak song. It would be dope. But
That would be crazy. Well, that was that goes back to what I was saying earlier about somebody kind of more trap influence for real matching up with somebody that can go bar heavy for real. You know what I mean? And making some real beautiful shit.
yeah, Kodak is a genuine artist. Kodak can rap. Kodak has many quotable lines over this course of the years in his catalog. Kodak's a true artist. I think Kodak's great. Do you think that since he came out on the scene in 2014, how do you think Kodak has progressed? And where do you think he ranks amongst his peers now? Is he almost
Amongst
in
his
like an
peers,
OG?
I feel like yeah, because I feel like he's lumped into a group of people that he's exceeded.
I think
You
he's
know what I
elite
mean?
now.
Absolutely, but I feel like at the same time he's looked at maybe by some as if he's in this group of like he might be looked at as somebody that you could put next to like Lil TJ or like somebody like that. But I feel like he's kind of like a father to that. You know what I mean? Like
Oh, he's beyond that.
it's almost like he's in the group, but he's the father of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember in 2016 when that freshman cover came out, I remember writing a paragraph on Facebook basically defending everyone who was on that cover because so many people I remember I just had so many art like on like in 2016 I remember like I went to South by Southwest, I saw Lil Yachty perform. I think I even saw 21 Savage perform before I even realized it was 21 Savage. But like I just saw all these like newer artists perform that were kind of like bubbling up underground stuff, Playboy Cardi. And I think I just had like an earlier appreciation for the type of crowds that they were drawing and just the different sound that they were coming out with at the time. So like I feel like people weren't necessarily like hip to that here in the Maritimes yet. And I remember like a lot of the hip hop purists that I had on my Facebook that were from around here when that Double XL cover came out with 21 Savage and Kodak and Lil Uzi and Lil Yachty and Designer, Lil Dicky, Denzel Curry, Dave East. And that was the whole cover right there. Anderson .Paak was on it too. And now people, as that time has progressed, a lot of artists that were on that cover are still around right now. Like that was actually proved to be a cover that consisted of artists that were new at the time, that were still learning to express themselves with their craft, but have grown, like Kodak and 21 and Lil Yacht, all of them. And Kodak, that was 5 years ago. So no, Kodak is definitely father. Again, the same respects as 21 Savage. They're, they've been around. They've surpassed the overnight, one hit wonder kind of hype that they battled against in the beginning, and I think that deserves to be respected. And I appreciate Kodak shit. Did you listen to the new Migos song, Straightening? There's nothing but a little bit of straightening. You didn't check that?
I haven't heard that yet.
It's pretty good, man. Do you think that like the Migos could release an album and have a few songs off it, get the kind of commercial success that they had when they had their little comeback in 2017 that kind of shot them to superstardom?
I don't know, man. Right now. I think the tone is changing, and I would love to see them change with the tone. I think that this is the last year that what they're doing is going to be prevalent. I really do. I feel like hip hop is going to kind of turn back to its roots a little bit. And not that they make bad music, but I don't think they necessarily make like hip hop at its like purest form.
I think they deserve to be considered.
They're definitely goats, man. They're definitely goats, but it's just they created a subgenre. Like Migos in and of themselves created the subgenre.
Well, basically, like the triplet flow that they popularized this decade already had been used previously by 3 6 Mafia, and I think even Nas kind of experimented with that in the past. But their popularity with certain songs with their flow, when it was like da 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 da, and that got to a point where you could be, lyrically and tech, however you want to describe it, you could be still saying something using that flow. I think that's just like the standard go-to flow now, depending on what beat you use. But I think that they're goats in their own right. They're originators, I think, to a degree. They shifted the sound. And I think that people will always hold them in high regards and respect them for that. Offset can rap his ass off. Takeoff can too. I think Quavo's a respected artist because he could come up with really catchy melodies and he can rap when he wants to. I was actually listening to their earlier mixtape that like Versace and Hannah Montana, like Chinatown and shit was on earlier today. I never really listened to that. And I liked a lot of their earlier shit, man. But I always will, I'm not like the biggest Migos fan in the world. I remember when they first came out in 2012, I hated them, but I didn't necessarily have an appreciation for much more than just like the best possible rap that could come out at that time. That wasn't like Kendrick, but I'm just from a numbers perspective. I think that's what always happens. You blow up, you get so popular, everyone starts getting sick of seeing you all the time, so they start talking shit. You dip off. You live like you enjoy the perks of your fame. You date someone famous. Offset dates Cardi B. Quavo was with Sweetie. Whatever. Takeoff is on a rocket ship, and and then you make the fans wait for music for so long. You come back properly, it might just be enough to kind of give yourself a little bit of a comeback. But we'll see what happens here, and. Also seeing this here, so Drake is going to receive Artist of the Decade at the Billboard Awards, I believe. I'm just going to fact check that. But do you think that's accurate? Yeah, Billboard Artist of the Decade. He's going to receive that for the Billboard Awards this year. Do you think that Drake is undoubtedly the artist of the past decade? That's massive.
Well,
that's crazy.
It's funny. I was actually listening to Nothing Was the Same earlier at work. And Drake has that line, I'm tired I'm tired of hearing about who you're checking for now. Just give it time. We'll see who's still around a decade from now. And I feel like that album was where like Drake solidified his comfort at the top. For real. Like I feel like he was already there probably, but like he really, after that point, took on this persona of being at the top. You know what I mean? And I don't think he stepped down since then. You know what I mean? It's almost a decade. That was what, 2013?
Yeah, 8 years later, and he was at the top then. I think that Drake.
That's what I'm saying. Like he was already at the top, but when he dropped that, it was like, hey, I'm here at the top, guys. You know what I mean? It was.
He's been at the top since Take Care.
Mm-hmm.
Take Care was like his like Thank Me Later was like Drake is being introduced into the top, but there's still a little bit of Lil Wayne-ness going on. Is Kid Cudi going to be the next biggest mainstream artist? Kanye just dropped My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Jay-Z's out here with like Blueprint 3. Then it was like Take Care was a follow-up. You had Headlines. You had the song Take Care. You had that whole album was a moment in time for me, fucking grade 9 life. And then, you know, Nothing Was the Same was a little bit more mature. And that was the first time we got to see Drake as a less of a emotional talk about being in my feelings artist and more of like I've talked my feelings in my day-to-day personal life to the point where now I can talk about shit. And then he followed that up with If You're Reading This Is Too Late. And then it was like The Future. Then yeah. The artist of the decade, 100%. No one has moved as well as he has and navigated as flawlessly as he has.
That being said, I do feel like he slightly degraded from there. Like not degraded. He walked away from this like essence that took him to where he was. Like I don't feel like it's the same thing. Like there's definitely nothing that can compete with what he does. You know what I mean? Like he's solid. Like I don't know how to put it other than there's nobody that can compete with what he does. But he also walked away from the vibe that took him there. And I mean, you got to switch it up a little bit for sure, or even a lot. But like, I just feel like I was saying earlier, he tries to he might get inspired by something and then walk entirely in that direction and kind of leave behind something. You know what I mean? Like
I think he's done very well at
which is fine. Like that's
shit out. But sometimes he will. I mean, yeah, it just depends on what phase he's going through. Regardless of what he does, I think that the biggest appeal, and I said this a few episodes ago, like with Drake's music at this point, and has been for maybe even the last 7 years, is just him communicating. Like he's got the attention of everybody. It's like he's like a musical vlogger. He's just documenting. I think the interest in his music is like he's documenting the day-to-day life of being a celebrity and a successful artist to that point. It's like this is like not just look how much money I have and look how many houses and cars and how big my house is and all this shit like that. You could say that in a witty, creative way when you're talking about those luxurious perks of your success. But he talks about stuff and still figures out a way to navigate a way to be relatable to people while still communicating how his day-to-day life is affected by certain issues and whatever from his success, whether it's like family falling out or betrayal from this person that you thought you could trust and all that stuff. And it's like that's what makes people interested. It's like let's hear personal information from the person that we know is just obviously very famous and successful that we just admire in the public eye, but give us like he continues to open up the curtain and give people tiny more glimpses of the personal life every time. And I think that's what makes people continue to be entertained by Drake. He doesn't do it through videos or behind the scenes shit. He just strictly only does it through his music, and maybe that's why his music continues to do what it does, because that's the only way you're going to hear anything from him.
Yeah, I don't know. He's, I mean, like it's hard to pin him up against anybody. He's definitely an amazing artist. He's definitely got artist of the decade, I would say. There's not a
Yeah, I
whole
think
lot of
that's fair
people
to
that can
say.
compete with that.
He's consistent, and that's what rewards him with it. I mean, even if there's a year when he's not dropping an album, he's still featured on a handful of singles that are hits. So
He keeps himself present. He comes back. The only thing that I would love to see him come back with bars, because I feel like he did that for a short period of time, and that's
you know
like,
who I want to hear some bars from?
hmm.
Childish Gambino.
Oh my God, yeah.
That, we talk about comeback with bars because Drake gave us bars last month. We've heard the Drake, like we have not.
Yeah, but
we're never gonna hear Childish Gambino bars again. Childish Gambino still holds the highest viewed video, I think, on Hot 97's YouTube channel for his freestyle that he did there with Peter Rosenberg like 8 years ago. Amazing, so good.
Oh yeah, he's ridiculous.
You should check out this podcast. Shout out to Chris Ross. We were shooting a music video the other day, but we were being safe, socially distancing. But anyway, he always been telling me this podcast on Spotify. It's called Dissect, and it's like if Anthony Fantano wasn't actually trying to review anything; they were just appreciating the art and the thought that was going into producing an album. But it's just like it's actually a Spotify official podcast. I have only listened to a few episodes of their Yeezus series, but for each season they pick an album and they break down like the musical composition of everything, song by, like, each episode is a song off the album, but it is like they'll break down, like, even if the producer or the songwriter didn't intentionally mean for it to come across this way, they'll like kind of make it make sense as to like how these certain sounds affect people in this way or whatever. And they do one for like Frank Ocean's Blonde. They do one for Childish Gambino's Because the Internet. They do one for Yeezus, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. I think they do it for Beyonce's Lemonade album. A lot of people, I guess, apparently are asking for them to do like Swimming and Circles, Mac Miller, but I can't talk on it too much because I haven't really dove into it too much. But it's interesting because it kind of just taps into like the psychological aspect of like the artist behind some of like the more thoughtful albums in like the hip hop R&B space of the last decade. But I'm kind of excited to do a deeper dive into that podcast. It's called Dissect. It's interesting. But as we're getting to the end of this here, I think we're over 2 hours now at this point. I'm excited as we're moving forward to hopefully get some guests on here. Hopefully we can do that when we get the physical space back up, so we could just kind of have us at the desk and then split screen of whoever the guests we get on here. But I want to shoot for the stars when it comes to guests. So who would be somebody that you would like to interview? They don't have to be in Cape Breton and Nova Scotia, like someone that's not like.
It doesn't even have to be reasonable. We'll write them a very well thought out email and try to get them on here.
Who would be someone that you would like to talk to? Let's manifest this shit at the end of this.
Yeah, and tell us what you would like to hear from them, because we'll try to make that happen. I think episode 11, we'll go for a guest.
Hopefully, yeah. Well, around that point, we gotta get to the double digits. I think we're doing well. Tonight we started off, we were like, I feel like we were just kind of adapting to the fact that we were about to embark into podcast land. And then I think we really picked it up. I think this is a good episode for sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess I think that I would like to think we might be able to get the Easy Mac interview, which would be dope. I DM'd him about a month and a half ago. He has new music coming out in June. He said he would be down to come on. So he's very limited to interviews on YouTube, but he just hit over 100,000 subscribers on his YouTube channels just based off of his music videos he puts out and shit. So shout out to him. That'd be awesome to be able to chop it up with him. But I mean, even like we were talking about Mark Norman and Joe List at the beginning of the podcast, like Mark Norman I've seen him do podcasts that get like he just kind of does everything. He's answered DMs for me before. Imagine if we could get him on, bro. I'd literally eat
That'd be
my.
hilarious.
Oh,
Talk
dude,
to him
that'd be.
about Ethereum, how it's eating shit.
Yeah, Ethereum is down. All crypto is down right now, but that's good buying opportunity. Um,
I spent my load.
you shot your load, buddy.
Shot my load at a height that I thought
Is
was
there
low.
anyone that you would like to get on? Any interesting minds that you'd like to tap into?
I would like to get on.
'Cause I think we're in the very beginning phases, like first 10 episodes. Like I said, we're warming up. You know, we're about to embark on a next level journey.
I don't think I have anybody within serious reach that I would like to get on. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the stuff that, like a lot of the content that I absorb is like has nothing to do with what we talk about. So I don't really have anybody that like I would look forward to hearing from. We did speak, I think, off camera about maybe having or speaking to Two Jackson, and I think that would be interesting because we met him at that Mac Miller concert, and we spoke about how we're such big fans of him and all the controversy. Oh, sorry, about the autobiography or whatever of him coming out. I would love to. I would love to hear from somebody that was close to him, that, or even like what was his name, Bill,
Hell yeah.
that
I
you
used
were
to
in
talk to
contact
Matt
with. That would be interesting as well. To get in contact with these people.
I think that would be really cool. It'd be a niche audience to tap into. I mean, I would be interested. There needs to be more Mac Miller stories shared. I don't know if his estate kind of keeps them close, what's the word? Tight knitted, close knitted.
Mm-hmm.
They keep them kind of conservative with the stories that are told, but we got it. The Mac Miller legacy and stories that have never been heard before, they need to be shared. I'd love to open up that platform to anyone that was friends with him, was a part of his come up, to kind of share those stories on our platform moving forward, because we're the biggest Mac Miller fans. We were before, always were, since best day ever. So that would be really interesting. Like that would be mind blowing. Like it would be awesome to use the podcast as a way to like really be able to get guests on that would just be amazing conversations, even if they weren't on camera. But to be able to use it as an episode would be fantastic in the future. So yeah, man, if you guys have any suggestions for guests or anyone that you think that you could link up that you would like to see on the show, let us know. So should we wrap it up?
Yes, sir. I'm gonna try and eat some booty.
Okay, respect.
Love you guys. This is the best podcast about nothing in particular ever.
God bless.
Good night.